everyone. In this video, we're going to look at how to use the information that we recorded in our graphic organizer to make a poem with imagery. So last week I had you look at what the break looks like, what the break sounds like, what the break tastes like, feels like, and smells like. I shared with you my brainstorming. So for example, what does the break look like for me? Well, I've been seeing a lot of computer screens and empty streets. What does it sound like? In my house, it sounds like people working. I hear lots of kids still playing outside. What does it taste like? Well, we've been experimenting with a lot of home-cooked meals and freshly baked bread. What does it feel like? It feels nervous. I'm nervous. I'm a bit uncertain, and yet I'm very grateful. And what does the break smell like? Well, lots of popcorn, lots of cookies, and lots of muffins. We've been eating a lot during this break. So now I can use this information to create a poem. Now the type of poem that we're going to create today is called a free verse poem. Free verse, and I'm going to write that out for you so you can see what it looks like. Free verse. Free verse means that a poem does not have to rhyme at the end. A lot of the poems that you've seen as you've been growing up have lines that rhyme, like cat and hat. So the end of the line will have the same ending sound. When you're writing a free verse poem, you don't have to write with rhyme. So it's very freeing. You can have whatever words ending the end of your line. You can just tell a story and not have to worry about the words rhyming at the end. So you'll notice today that the poems that I wrote using the information from my graphic organizer, the ends of the lines don't rhyme. If once in a while you get a line that rhymes, that's just fine. However, with free verse, you don't have to focus on that. So keep in mind, it's a lot more freeing than writing a rhyming poem. Okay, so here's the first poem that I wrote using the information from my graphic organizer. Once I'm done reading the poem, I'm going to show you how I took information from my graphic organizer and put it into my poem. So here's the first poem. It's called The Break. Our break was to end many weeks ago, but I'm yet to return to school. A virus keeps us at home, yet life continues. Kids scream joyfully in their yards, but not in the parks nearby. Adults complete their work, but not in an office downtown. Screens surround us as we learn, work, and play. A new normal, they say, but it's not forever. One day, life outside of our homes will resume. The nervousness will end, the fear will subside, and the joy of being with others will take hold of our hearts and minds. Okay, so that's the poem that I wrote. Do you notice that the ends of the lines, they don't rhyme? I think I had an accidental rhyme in here somewhere. Play and say. Look at that, I do have an accidental rhyme, but that wasn't intentional actually. Do you notice that I decided where I wanted to have line breaks? Our break was to end, and I decided I wanted that to be the highlight of the line. So then I started a new line. Our break was to end many weeks ago. And you'll notice with poetry, there's a lot of white space. Do you see all this space here to the side? Sometimes poems are centered in the middle and there's lots of white space around it. That's the thing about poetry and how it distinguishes itself from prose. So you'll notice that there's lots of white space in poetry. Okay, so let's take a look how this poem was born from this graphic organizer. Now you'll notice that I used a lot of words that are in the poem. Computer screens, empty streets. Did I have empty streets in this poem? Nope. But I used computer screens, I used people working, I used kids playing outside, I used, let's see, did I use any baking? Nope, not in this one. So I skipped over this. Did I say that we were nervous? Let's see, yes, I used the word nervous. And did I talk about any baking? Nope. So I took some key points here. I used computer screens, I used people working, I used kids playing outside, I skipped over what it tastes like, but I did talk about how it feels to me, how I feel nervous. And again, I skipped over the smell. So I don't have to use every sense when I'm doing it. However, I want to touch on different senses in my poem. Like I said, you don't have to do every sense, but you do want to touch on different senses so that your reader can really connect to your poem and visualize and feel what it is that you were experiencing when you wrote the poem. Okay, so that's the first poem that I wrote, a free verse poem with no intentional rhymes, touching on different parts from my graphic organizer. This is the second poem that I wrote based on my graphic organizer. I'll read it to you. It's called The Pandemic. The streets are bare as people hide in their homes from an enemy too small to see. We are hibernating, but we are not in a deep slumber. We bake, we play, we learn, we work, we stare at screens for now. We are breaking the chain of transmission so we can one day emerge to a new normal. We are nervous, yet grateful, scared, yet happy, uncertain of the future, but certain in our community that together we can end the pandemic. So I chose to focus in this poem about what's keeping us on this extended break, and that's the pandemic. Now you'll notice that I did actually use a lot of information from my graphic organizer. So did I talk about, let's see, the streets are bare as people hide in their homes? There it is. I talked about the empty streets. We are hibernating, but we're not in a deep slumber. We bake. So I talked about the baking that we did. Okay. We stare at screens. So again, I used that idea. We are breaking the chain of transmission. Now what that means is by staying away from others, we're preventing others from getting the virus. So we can one day emerge to a new normal. You may have heard that term, a new normal, from people that are around you. We are nervous yet grateful. Now you'll notice I used both of those feelings. Scared yet happy. Uncertain of the future. There's where I used the word uncertain. But certain in our community that together we can end the pandemic. So what I did was, when I wrote both of these poems, was I looked at the information in my graphic organizer. I decided, what is the story that I want to tell in my poem? And once I decided that in the first one, I wanted to focus on what the break feels like. And in the second one, I wanted to focus on the reason why we're on the break. So I kind of had a goal in my writing, what I wanted to focus on. Then I decided what parts of my graphic organizer I wanted to use. Now you'll notice that I added a lot of words. I did not just write a poem based on the word uncertain or the word grateful. I had to add words to my poem so that it sounded like I was telling a bit of a story. Okay, so that's what I expect from you too. I want you to tell a little bit of a story. It's not going to be a long story that you're going to be telling, but I do as your reader want to see and feel and hear, maybe even taste what your break so far has felt like. Now remember, you don't have to make your poem rhyme. In my poems, none of the words at the end of the lines rhyme. I'm simply telling a story, and I'm deciding where I want to have the line breaks. The streets are bare. I decided I wanted that to be the highlight of the line, and then I started a new line, as people hide in their homes. And then I wanted to start a new line, from an enemy too small to see. And you see I put a period there at the end. I took a sentence and broke it down into 1, 2, 3 lines, and you can do that too. I used a period in my poetry, but you know what? The thing about poetry is that we don't have to use punctuation. You can decide if you want to put a period or comma at the ends of your lines, okay? So we are hibernating. I wanted to focus on that. Hibernating means like a bear where they go into that long, deep sleep for the winter. We are hibernating, but we are not in a deep slumber, and slumber means that deep sleep. Okay, so what I want you to do is to use your graphic organizer. Go to the sheet that's in your poetry booklet, and I want you to create a poem using these ideas, but of course adding words. And then you're going to write a poem about your break, or you can write it about the pandemic, COVID-19. You decide what you want the title to be, and then just create a poem based on the words that you used in your graphic organizer. Okay, have fun. Bye for now.